Welcome to Hustle and Flow with Heather Hubbard, episode number 15. Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard, and I was a litigator, partner, and practice group leader at an AmLaw 200 firm. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your personal life. So how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you embrace your ambition without selling your soul? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, Heather Hubbard. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am recording this podcast after finishing up my Mastermind intensive here in Nashville. So I host a mastermind for an amazing group of women attorneys. And they flew in from San Francisco, DC, and several states and cities in between to spend 3 days with me here in Nashville for our in-person intensive. And it was so good. It's always great to connect by video. That's how we normally meet. But there is just something about that in-person, face-to-face connection. And so it was so great to really just be able to spend time with everyone and have them spend time with each other as well. So we did a few different things. We worked on personal branding. And I had Cindy Sullivan, she is a time management guru, come in to do assessments and help with some coaching on that front. And then we mapped out our next 30 to 90 days. And a few different things came up that I thought was super insightful, interesting, not sure the right word, but I thought you guys might actually be interested in hearing it and basically letting me kind of outline for you what I did for my mastermind clients. So when Cindy came in, the assessment that she gave us relates to what she calls her 6-pillar system. And there are 6 different pillars that really hold up all of your time management abilities. And we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. Well, the very first pillar is all about goals, being able to identify what you want, being able to map out a way to achieve those goals, and then in fact, achieving them. And you can be a high achiever and not be good at setting and mapping goals. Now, this is something that comes really easy to me, and so I assume it does everyone else as well. I think I often forget that we all do have our own expertise, and perhaps one of the reasons why so many people come to me for goal setting and achieving is because I am so good at it. But so we got the results from Cindy, and on that particular pillar, again, keep in mind that the women that are in my group, they are high achievers. They know how to get things done, but except for one, they all scored less than 30% on this goal mapping ability. And I scored 100%. And I'm not saying that to brag because I can tell you how I scored in some other areas which were not as good, right? So I'm not trying to say that I'm better than anyone else, but in this particular area, I am good. And so I'm just going to own that. I am really, really good at goal mapping. I know how to set and achieve goals, not just for myself, but for others as well. And so it occurred to me, I should share that with you. I should share with you my system. There are many different ways to accomplish something. It's kind of like time management in general or anything, right? Even nutrition and exercise. There are a million different ways to approach something. You just want to pick at least one tried and true method and just go with that. You don't have to follow one system in order to get results. So, if you're already really good at saying, okay, here are my goals, and then just knocking them out, then you may not need this, right? You may already score really high. But if you find that you set goals, oftentimes we do that at the beginning of the year and we say, here's what all I want to accomplish, or maybe you have a business plan. And at the end of the year, you didn't really spend that much time on your goals. Or maybe you made progress towards them, but when you look back at your plan, you're like, well, I didn't do any of those things. You just kind of played it by ear, and because you happen to be a high achiever, you were able to make some kind of progress. Then goal mapping is going to be huge for you. Now, I'm going to go through this today, and I hope that you decide to follow through with some of it. But like any plan, like any system, if you don't regularly follow it, if you don't implement it on a regular basis, it will not work. So you can't just map this out one time and think that, that's all you have to do. It is a habit. It is a routine. It is something that you have to build into your schedule. But if you have goals that you really want to meet, I'm going to give you a system that's going to help you get there. Now, before I actually get into the details of the system, I want to say that it's actually a bit broader than this. I prefer to start out with really knowing what your vision is and your motivation behind it. So I have always been able to achieve goals, but what I didn't always do was get clear as to why I wanted to achieve that goal. I have been very open with you all that I'm a highly competitive person. So sometimes I set goals just because people tell me I can't reach them. And sometimes I set goals because that's what the legal industry says is important. And that doesn't lead to happiness or satisfaction. And so hopefully by now, my mission is to help you be super successful, but also deeply satisfied. And so if you are not clear as to your long-term vision and why you want those things, then reaching these goals will, you can check a box, you can say you achieved the goal, but you still may not be happy. So I just want to preface our conversation with that. We don't have time to get into all of that today, but just know that it is important that you get clear on your why so that you're not just setting and achieving goals that aren't going to truly bring you happiness at the end of the day. All right, with that out of the way, let's talk about goal mapping. This might be my favorite subject of all time. All right. So what you want to do is you want to be able to connect the dots. You need a clear map that has a through line, right? So I think where a lot of people get tripped up, they know what their goal is and they have an idea of some of the things that need to happen to reach that goal, but they don't have that clearly mapped out, right? Like you can't follow the line from the start point to the end point. You're just standing there and you see the start point and you see the end point and you assume that you'll just be able to get yourself there, right? But you don't know the path that you're taking. And that is a huge mistake. One, if you're not going to figure out the exact path, it actually keeps you from testing whether or not it's a good idea, right? So that through line, that path actually gives you an ability to test the legitimacy of your strategy. And the second reason is if you know the path and you've tested the strategy, then you're going to have more confidence when you go to execute. So what I mean by that is if you know exactly what you've got to do and the order in which you've got to do it, when you wake up that day to work on your goal, you know what to do. And I think a lot of people just, say, okay, I know I've got this goal out there, and they either put it off, right? It's always on the back burner. You're like, I'll deal with that when I have time, which is, by the way, never. Or if you schedule time to work on this goal, you sit down and you're like, okay, what am I going to do today? Right? And so you waste so much time trying to think about what you're going to do next. And again, it may not actually be the best route to get where you want to go. So this is why goal mapping is critical. It allows you to test the feasibility and it gives you the confidence to move forward quickly and gain momentum. And so the way that you do that is you really want to fill in the picture as much as you can from the very beginning. You want to include a lot of supporting details. You're also going to need a schedule to implement those details. All right, so let's talk about the supporting details. My father was a principal, and back in the day, so he was a high school principal, and then he was a middle school principal, and then went back to high school. So he's at a school where, scheduling was super important. And you had all of these different students that were in, they had all of these different classes, different periods, sometimes there were different sections. And then how did you split them up? Well, this was before, we had computers. And there were computers, but public schools didn't have access to them. And they certainly didn't have software systems that would support them in these ways. I mean, we were probably playing Oregon Trail, but they didn't have software systems that helped them do the scheduling. So they had to do it by hand. They would take, I mean, there might have been different systems for this too, but the way my dad did it was he had all of these index cards. And so he would, their names were on them and they had these big tables in the library and they would have to like sort it out. And I remembered as a very young child seeing that and I was mesmerized by it. So because I was a bit nerdy, I wanted to do it too. And so I would create my own little games to play where I was scheduling all of these different students in different classes. And I would have my charts out and it was really all about problem solving. How do you get this many students in this many classes? They're able to mix it up based upon, their specific needs. And how do you make all of that fit? And it was one of my favorite pastimes. And at some point when I was young, and I probably shouldn't even be sharing this, they actually hired me to come in and do it because I was so good. So, here I was probably in the 5th or 6th grade actually creating schedules for these middle school and high schoolers. But anyway, I digress. This is what you're trying to do though. You are trying to create this system, this schedule where everything fits together and it's going to work. Where people make a mistake is they say, okay, so my goal is to get the schedules set for the school year, right? And then you just show up and you're like, okay, let's get started. Well, no, you need like a tried and true system in place. You have to know how you're going to go about doing this. Otherwise, you're going to show up to work every day and say, oh my God, where are we even going to start? Oh, right? And then you just get completely overwhelmed and completely paralyzed. And then when you actually do pull something together at the last minute because you're under a deadline, it's probably going to have a lot of kinks and be really, really wonky. So here's how you do this. Now, I'm going to have a free PDF for you so that, if you're driving or you're working out, you don't have to take notes. You're just going to want to go to hustleandflowpodcast.com/15. And so I'll have a free PDF for you that kind of outlines this process, and then you can actually fill in the worksheet yourself. Okay, so here's step number 1. You want to decide, are you creating a 30-day plan or a 90-day plan? Here's a word of advice. If you are not really good at planning or scheduling on a daily basis, a regular basis, right? If you generally don't work towards your goals, choose a 30-day plan. You may have the tendency to want to go after a 90-day plan because it allows you to work on more things, but the first and most important thing to work on is just this habit piece. And so, small rewards, it's going to be much better for you than trying to bite off more than you can chew. Okay. So if you have a 30-day plan, just know that you can only work on one goal. I'm going to come back to this. If you've got a 90-day plan, you can work on up to 3 goals. I'm okay with you just having 1. But 3 is the maximum. Now, my clients push back on this, and I had some in the mastermind. I'm going through it with them. We're mapping things out, and they're like, I'm not following your system. I'm pushing back. I'm going to do it differently. And mark my words, they will not reach those goals. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but this is just how it works. If you try to do too many things, you won't be able to get them all done. And when you dilute your focus, you dilute your results. And that is where most people really get tripped up. So you have to get focused. Here's the thing. If you're not reaching your goals anyway, why say you have to do them all? Because you're not going to. All right. So bear with me on this. If you're doing a 30-day plan, you get 1 goal. It doesn't mean that you can't be working on other things, but that's your focus for when we do this scheduling and planning I'm about to talk about next. Again, if you've got 90 days, you can have up to 3 goals. Now, as you start to get good at this and you figure out your own, bandwidth and capability, you might be able to expand it, but this is really where you should start. Otherwise, you're going to say this system doesn't work and you're going to throw it out the window. And it's not going to work, not because it failed you, but because you didn't follow the instructions. All right. Okay. So you have your goal. Well, your goal should be a little bit lofty. All right. So I want you to think about what you came up with. If your goal is something like organize my files, paint the house, hire a paralegal, those are not goals. Those are projects. Okay. So A goal is something that is much larger. A goal would be connected to your why. So if you're thinking about painting your house, then the goal might actually be improve the maintenance of my house to increase the equity value by X%. Or it might even be something more emotional, right? It could be improve the house so that I feel more comfortable and relaxed when I'm not at work. But I hope you can see what I'm talking about in that you're just connecting the why. Why are you doing that? It can actually be super motivating if you know what that why is. And it helps you understand why you only have 1 to 3 goals, because they are not projects. They are overarching, right? So when you've got your vision of your future, painting the house is not part of your vision of the future, right? Maybe your vision of the future is having a well-maintained home that feels really good to you. Well, painting your house might be part of that, but that in and of itself is not the goal, okay? So let's shift that. Let's do a work example. So let's say your goal is to get, let's say it's a 30-day goal. Your 30-day goal is to get 2 new clients or 2 new matters. If you just write that down without knowing how you're going to do it, then you're probably going to waste a lot of your time just going to networking events. You'll you have ADD. And so you'll be like, oh, there's a conference, or there's something I should write about, or, oh, here's a good example. I should take this person to lunch, right? But you're not mapping it out. You're just being erratic in your approach. You know the goal and you occasionally think about it. And so you just do something random that you think might help get you there. The way that you map this out is you want to think through it on the front end. So if your goal is to get 2 new clients in 30 days, then what needs to happen next? And go ahead and think about that now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. Now that you've set your goal, what needs to happen in order to reach that goal? There are a million different strategies that you can take. I don't care what the goal is. There are going to be many different ways to approach it, but you just have to pick a few that you think will be effective. So if you want to go to a conference, if you want to write an article, if you want to take clients to lunch, great, but identify it on the front end. Because if you go ahead and put all of your ideas down and you see them all at once, you'll be able to say, well, that looks pretty scattered. That's not a very focused approach. Or you might be able to say, that's way too much. I can't get all that done. Or this is probably the best, right? So it allows you to go ahead and prioritize which projects are going to be most likely to help you reach that goal. So that's what you're doing next. You've got your goal, and then you want to start brainstorming all of the different projects that you might have to get you to that goal. Now, a project is different than a task. So this is a 3-pronged approach. You've got your goals, you've got your projects, and you've got your tasks. A task is something that you can, as soon as you do it, you can check it. It cannot include multiple steps. And so many people make mistakes when they create task lists. So if your task is update the website, no. That's a project. Because here's the thing. You can't just sit down and update the project in one single step. Now, I don't know what update the website means, but let's say it's your bio. Okay. So step 1 is you review your current bio, right? Maybe you're printing it out and reading it. Step 2 is editing it, rewriting it. There might be a research component in it. I don't know. Step 4 might be getting it to your assistant or your marketing department, or maybe it's you logging into your website. Again, you got to make this personal to you. But as you think about this, there are a lot of different steps involved. And then you're going to have, actually publishing it and then testing it. So when you say update website, that actually involves a lot of different steps. And so that is not a task. That is a project. And the reason why that matters, studies show that when you are not super specific with your task item, those are the things that feel really overwhelming on your to-do list because you have not broken it down step by step. So if I ever look at your to-do list and it is not obvious to me, like I can't come in and do it for you, then your to-do list is not granular enough. You are not being detailed enough. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You've got a goal, and the goal needs to be connected to a why, right? I generally say that you may or may not be able to reach a goal, even if you try everything you can. Whereas with a task and a project, as long as you just follow the steps, that piece is going to, happen. So, for example, if you were trying to get 2 new clients that month, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, but you can definitely make sure that you actually complete all of your tasks and you can complete all of your projects. So, with that framework in mind, here's how you want to test out your strategy. And let me back up a second. If you have a 30-day plan with just one goal, go ahead and brainstorm your projects. And then under those projects, once you've decided the ones that you think are the best, then go ahead and outline those tasks. If, on the other hand, you have a 90-day plan where you have up to 3 goals, I do want you to go ahead and brainstorm your projects, but I don't want you to do the tasks because that's going to get really overwhelming. To sit down in one setting and map out 3 goals over 90 days with a ton of projects and a ton of tasks underneath, it's literally going to take all day. You're still not going to be finished with it, and you're not going to want to come back to it. So try to avoid looking at tasks at that point, okay? And I'm going to talk about when you deal with it in a second. All right, so the way that you're going to test this out is if you have the 30-day plan and you've outlined the tasks, I want you to assign how much time you think it's going to take to complete each task. And then you're going to tally that up, and then you'll put a total hour by each project. Similar with the 90-day plan, because you've not broken down the tasks, it's probably not going to be as accurate, but I want you to go ahead and think about that project and just say, how much time is this probably going to take? And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to give that a total time frame. Then you're going to say, how much time do I have in the next 30 to 90 days, based upon what your plan is, to actually focus on my goals, right? I'm going to say that again. It's super important. How much time are you truly going to commit and dedicate to working on your goals? So if you're the type of person that's always putting business development off, and you say, okay, I'm going to do 20 hours of business development this week, well, that's not realistic. So you got to be honest with yourself. If you know you're only going to do 2 to 3 hours a week, or maybe even 30 minutes a week, then just say it, right? Be honest with how much time you are willing to commit. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take the amount of time that you actually are going to commit for the next 30 to 90 days, depending on your plan, and then look at the projects that you have and see if they line up. If your projects are going to take 50 hours and all you have time to commit is 10 hours, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. And this is why goal mapping is critical, because you want to know on the front end if something is going to work or not, because either you're going to have to say, you know what, my vision and my goal is so important that I'm willing to move other things off my calendar in order to make this happen. Or you get more honest and realistic and say, okay, maybe that goal was a bit lofty and that can't be my goal right now. This is where the disconnect happens. We commit to things that we don't have time to do, or we assume that, I can easily do that, when in reality, it takes a lot longer to do it. And because we're overwhelmed, because we don't see a clear path, because we don't have it mapped out, we just avoid it. So this is how you make sure you reach your goals. You make sure it's aligned. Literally from a timing perspective, you make sure that it's going to work out. Now, the strategy that you've come up with, right, that may not land your 2 clients, but you can test the goal mapping is what I'm talking about. You can test whether or not it's a feasible path. It would be the same concept of saying, how many times do I have to stop and get gas? You can do that math. You can do this math, and you need to be doing it. Otherwise, you're just kind of going about it in the dark, and that's not a really good plan for trying to get from point A to point B. Okay, here is the last step. Once you have, balanced that, and you know that you've got the right amount of time set aside for doing your tasks and projects to reach your goals, then you actually have to do it. You have to execute. And so the only way you're going to execute is if you get into the habit of setting aside time. And that can't just be putting it, on your calendar and then again, just sitting down and saying, oh, what am I going to work on today? You need to be planning on a weekly basis, and it doesn't have to take much time, but you got to do it. And if you really want to reach your goals, you need to be doing daily planning as well. So I'm going to tell you about both, and I want you to commit to which one you want to try. So weekly planning, that means you're going to sit down once a week at a predetermined time in order to look at your calendar for the week to say, okay, based on what I've got going on, I can in fact dedicate the amount of time I thought I could to my goals. So, if you have a really busy week where you've got depositions and trials and you said that you were going to do 5 hours a week on your goals, but the truth is you can only get to 1, then you just want to be honest about that. That's what this planning session is for. And if you have a really light week and you had said you were going to do 5 hours, maybe you say, actually, I think I can do 10, right? You're just checking in on a weekly basis to look at your calendar and true up how much time you actually have to dedicate to your goals. And then you're going to look at your master plan. You're going to look at your master projects and tasks, and you're going to say, not what's easiest to do, but what would make the most progress, right? And sometimes things need to happen in a certain order. So you're going to say what needs to happen next and what's going to push me forward, the most, right? I'm going to make the most progress this week. And so you identify what those projects and tasks are based on how much time it's going to take. You've already got that written down on your master plan. You now know how much time you have for the week, and you've got it set. Now, you can go ahead and put that on a particular day. You can just have it written down on your desk and you're going to get to it at some point. You know how well you manage your own time and your own schedule. So do what's best for you. I'm going to tell you what I do, and that's daily planning to support the weekly planning. So I do my weekly planning either on Friday afternoon or on Sunday. It really just depends. Because I know it's going to get done, I don't have to have it on my calendar. If you're not in the habit of doing this, I want you to pick a day and a time that you're going to do it every single week for the next 4 weeks. So what I do is I have that set. And then at the end of each day, I plan for the next day. So again, it's the same concept as the weekly planning, but it's daily. And I say, okay, how much time do I have to devote? And then at that point, I go ahead and write down what I'm going to get done that day. And I generally try to tackle it first, because if I say I'm going to tackle it last, there's generally enough emergencies, fake emergencies, or other things that come up that will allow me to put that on the back burner. And reaching my goals, that's one of my highest priorities. I do not let others take that time from me. So if you are committed to your vision and you're committed to your goals, then you have to make it a priority. No one's going to do that for you. So that's how I do it. And I know it works, right? So if you have some goals that you really want to reach, I encourage you to try out this goal mapping process. You've got your 30 or 90 days. You've got your projects. You've got your tasks. You've got the time set aside. You have tested it. You know that it can work. It may not, but you know that it can from a time perspective. And then you plan and schedule it weekly and hopefully daily. And if you do that, if you follow this system, I promise you that you are going to increase the odds of your success in reaching those goals by like 80 to 90%. So here's my challenge for you. I want you to go get that free download. Go to hustleandflowpodcast.com/15. I want you to download the goal mapping spreadsheet. And I challenge you to test this out for at least 30 days. Do at least one goal for 30 days. And see what happens. And I want you to come back and tell me. I want you to tell me how it worked out for you. And if it didn't work at all, I will help you. I will personally help you fix it. I promise. But here's the thing. You're going to make more progress than you've probably ever made before. And so I want to be there to cheer you on and support you. And then you'll be able to start moving into the 90 days and really knocking stuff out. And when you start to see that progress and momentum, it's so exciting because you're starting to make your goals your priorities so that you can get closer to the vision that you have for your life. And that's just the fun, exciting part of why we're here and what we're doing. It doesn't have to be, hustling all the time and drudgery all the time. It can be a lot of fun and super rewarding. So I challenge you to goal map using my system for the next 30 days and let me know how it goes. All right. That is it for today. I will see you next week. Are you feeling stuck or frustrated in your career? Are you exhausted from trying to balance so many competing demands? Do you have big dreams and goals, but no time to focus on them? Then join me in a small group of female attorneys for the Life and Law in Balance retreats at Miraval. They're coming up in June and September. To learn more and register, go to lifeandlawinbalance.com. I'd love to meet you there.